Councillor Bridges.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I'll start this motion by saying, to some extent, I bring this motion with a heavy heart because, like many people across the chamber, supporting women who are suffering domestic violence is absolutely very close to my heart. Throughout my time working at Citizens Advice and now working at Mind, I saw day in and day out the impacts of domestic abuse, domestic violence on women and children. Not only on women and children, of course, men suffer too, but disproportionately, women suffer the impact of domestic abuse and domestic violence. What I also saw was those many women who were trapped in domestic abuse because they were not able to leave. Not able to leave because of financial abuse, emotional abuse. They were trapped in that situation. And so I do commend all organisations that work to support those who are affected by domestic abuse, who are victims of domestic abuse. Women, children, men across the country that are suffering day in and day out, across our communities. There are too many. So I bring this motion to highlight the fact that, unfortunately, winner trading, as has been advertised in the news more recently, has been brought to the public's attention in the news, is that the winner trading, with 178 properties across the city, is allowing disrepair to continue. These houses are not safe. We saw on the news report, we read in the news article, we heard from women who were speaking up and saying, I have been living in an unsafe property. I haven't got a back door that's safe. I've got a cardboard back door. I've got locks that don't work. I haven't got any target hardening. We all know about target hardening. All of us, I'm sure, across the city give money to local organisations that support target hardening. This is absolutely essential. When women take the massive step to be able to flee domestic abuse and domestic violence, they need to be in a safe property. They need to be in a property that is fit for them to be in, for them to be safe, and for them not to be living in disrepair. I've been following some of the issues around Winner for many years, the support, and I first remember raising this with the council around the exempt housing benefit and how it was being misused in 2015. Sorry, not in 2015, in 2017. I wasn't a councillor in 2015. But I first remember raising it with the council at that time, and we did have a special workshop on that issue, and it was began to be looked at. I'm grateful that the council went on at a later date to set up the SART team that now does so much good work across the city to address some of these issues, as does environmental health, which cannot be faulted. However, we still have 178 properties in the city where women and children are living in gross disrepair. The council needs to address this issue, and they have. To be fair to the council, they have done everything they can. Last year, there was an internal investigation which led to a referral to the Charity Commission, and working with the Charity Commission, there was an investigation. Because these women are living in these properties, they are trapped in this disrepair, they are afraid to speak up. That is why it is incumbent on us to speak up for them. I spoke to a resident yesterday who lives in one of these properties. She showed me the damp and the mould. I've seen other properties like this in the South Coats ward, but she showed me the damp and the mould. And she said environmental health are involved, they are doing something about it, but I have been living here now for 10 years and I can't get out of this house. She's on the housing list, but she is housed. And that is the trouble. She is adequately housed. But being adequately housed is not living in a house that is damp, that is mouldy, that isn't safe. We as a council need to act on this. I'm very glad that again this year, the issue that was raised by employees that used to work at Winner, that was taken forward by the council, that has been taken seriously, and that the matter has now been referred to the Regulator for Social Housing. It is also with the Charity Commission. One of the most senior employees at Winner that had to leave due to them not listening to the whistleblowing internally has also made a referral to the Social Housing Regulator for Social Housing. That has been accepted. There are many, many examples of disrepair in these properties. More women have come forward on the back of the BBC report. The BBC are going to speak to us later today to understand what's happening with these properties. What more can we do? I would like to work with the portfolio holder to see more action on this. I know that the portfolio holder cares about this as much as I do. We need to make sure that action is taken, that these 170 properties are urgently reviewed. We look at the women that are in them, that are on the housing waiting list. We look what can be done to help these women. We look what can be done to take action against Winner and the inadequate support that they are now giving to women across this city. Countless employees have left. Countless trustees have left. It speaks for itself. If people want evidence, I can provide you with ample evidence from ex-employees, from residents, from ex-staff members. I haven't got any trustees, but I'm sure that there will be trustees willing to come forward. We need to take action. So I'm very glad to bring this motion, and I hope that it gets cross-party support. I feel confident that it will, because I know how much this issue matters to everybody in the chamber. I'm glad that it's going to go to the Executive Commission. The legal officer recommended that we amended our motion to that fact. We did so gladly. If it goes to the Executive Commission and there's action, we will all be grateful, because this is unacceptable for these women who are trapped in these properties, unable to move because they are adequately housed.
Councillor Bridges, you are out of time. You have had a short extension. Are you winding up?
I am winding up, Lord Mayor. I'm sure everyone can see how emotional I feel about this matter. It's been happening for too long. We need to stop it continuing. So I call on the chamber to support this motion, but to take real action to look at what we can do for these women in these properties, to take action on the domestic abuse contracts that this council has. It's £107 million going to Winner. Some of that money will be money well spent, but at the moment they're not adequately staffed, women are not getting the support they need, and something needs to be done. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. Is that seconded, please? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to second the motion moved by Councillor Bridges, and I want to concur with her about the heavy heart that we do this with, and our commitment to supporting women fleeing from domestic violence, and our commitment to families and the most vulnerable. A news article which on the BBC on the 4th of March outlined the concerns about the poor state of repair of housings, including mould, doors repaired with cardboard, door handles removed, and water entering through light fittings. And it was all extremely worrying. And since that initial report, more people have come forward and those concerns have grown. It's also been subsequently reported by ex-employees of Winner Trading Limit, and that they haven't been happy with the action taken during the management of that organisation to instigate repairs and with the state of the properties. So I'd also like to thank the officers that investigated the important action to report this to the Social Housing Regulator. And the Social Housing Regulator, I'm not going to go through all of their responsibilities, but clear in their consumer standards is the responsibility for quality and safety in the housing standard, which requires that every property should have a detailed report and meet the decent home standard and have repairs carried out adequately and in a timely fashion. But for us as a council, this should not be the end of the matter. The report has been made, and that's that. But whilst investigations are being carried out by the social housing regulator, we must remember that the women and families in these homes are amongst the most vulnerable of our residents, and many of whom have fled appalling situations. We all know from all the overview and scrutiny committees that we sit on, the reports that we hear, that safe, secure housing is a foundation for anybody to be able to move on in life and recover from situations. So as a council, we must renew our support and do all we can to ensure that we provide these families with safe and decent homes. And therefore, I draw attention to the request that this council carries out environmental surveys and all of those 178 properties to gain a better picture of the status of the disrepair, and if necessary, find alternative accommodation for those families in those with immediate effect to make sure that they are safe and secure. And my other point was really about Winner itself. Now, Winner has been around for 20 years, I think, and during that years has, celebrates the fact that it's raised £20 million. But it's had the same trustees and management structure over all of those years, and there's been many concerns. Both charities, although Winner Trading Limited, the housing is a different organisation to Preston Road Women's Centre, they're sister organisations with the same trustees and the same management systems, and those management systems are poor. If the management of the social housing is poor, it brings into question the quality of the management of all of the other services they are provided. And many of those other services are commissioned by this council. So if you look at their accounts for 2024, it shows that a third of the income for those services came from this council. And we have a duty to ensure that any services that we commission are provided properly and managed properly and for the best of the residents. And it is for this reason that this motion calls on the council to look at the way the work is being commissioned and ensure that it's being delivered with the best possible intention for the benefit of those vulnerable women and their families. So I ask the Chamber to support this motion. Thank you.
So I have Councillor Hale.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Bit of a diversion, but I'll get to the point. Before the boundaries changed, and obviously Thornton Estate came into the ward I represent, we used to represent the old St Andrews, Nadine and me, and Steve and Mary used to represent South Coates West. And we always used to say, there's a myth out there from lots of people out there that, about council housing. And we used to say, the council housing for rented housing is the top of the pile. We don't always get it right, but it's the top of the pile. The far worse properties that we used to come across in our surgeries and people were the private rented sector, and then the charitable sector and the housing association sector. And I'm afraid, even after the boundaries changed, and Geraldo, Leanne and me, many of the housing cases that we get, disproportionately, it's the large housing association properties, the charitable properties, and the private rented properties, where people often are wanting to move into council property because they know that, in a sense, there's far more likelihood that the repairs will get done, and in a sense, there'll be a good landlord. It was that very debate between, with Steve and Mary and later the others and Nadine and myself, that we argued for the SART team, because it cannot be the case that those people that are worried about complaining for fear of ending their tenure in that housing, the ball is in their court to have to raise these issues, because they know if they raise those issues, they will often get the worst response. People have come to my surgeries in years gone by complaining about the roof falling in their property, and they've raised it and been evicted. That's a nature. Private rented, people in charitable housing, and all I will remind people that the winner group have properties citywide, yeah, including in our ward. People, again, who, in a sense, feel scared to raise concerns for fear of being evicted. That's why we brought in the SART team. That's why the whole chamber bought into the SART team. But that's only part of the solution. The benefit, surely, of a social housing regulator is that they actually have teeth and they take action. Because it might be the case, in my view, that some housing associations and some charitable housing providers hide behind the cloak of respectability that comes with, you know, the halo effect of them being a charity or being linked to a charity. Well, that in itself is not good enough. What it's about is it shouldn't matter whether you rent off a private land, or it shouldn't matter whether you rent off a housing association or the council. As Councillor Bridges said, you deserve, we demand, and those tenants deserve, without fear or favour, decent, adequate housing that they won't be potentially evicted from or threatened in if they raise concerns about the state of those properties. And it isn't just, it is Winner, it's not just Winner. I mean, Councillor Kassim brought me an example from her ward where tenants were fearful of raising issues of damp and mould and were told it's the condensation's your fault, it's a lifestyle choice. No, it isn't. It isn't. It's the fact that you're not keeping your properties up to scratch for the huge amounts of money that you're getting from those tenants to maintain those properties. And it's particularly bad in some of the charitable sector where it includes, as Councillor Bridges was saying, effectively exempt housing benefit, where effectively they're charging more for services. Now, I remember a case Nadine brought to me and asked for help with, where people were breaking into the house that was supposed to be effectively a refuge and effectively a domestic violence refuge place. And they were breaking in. And when we went to them, I said, where's all this security they're paying for? They said, oh, well, we send a security guard who drives past once a night in a car. And they were being charged pounds and pounds for that service. I mean, that's not a service. That's taking the mick, quite honestly, isn't it? And what we have to bear in mind is we need the council, quite rightly, to look at what people are getting for these support charges. The SART team's brilliant. We need that sort of response to all these organisations, and we need the social housing regulator to have teeth and ensure they take action. You hear a lot about councils, probably rightly so in some cases, but we need to hear a lot about every tenure so that everybody has a minimum standard of tenancy in this city. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hale. Councillor T. Neal.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this motion because it is only right that women fleeing domestic abuse are able to turn to organisations that have safe and secure homes that meet the decent home standard. My concern is that if it is deemed that this organisation has not been delivering appropriate support, that the funding will then be removed. In my opinion, we should use instead an evidence-based approach to resolve issues when they become apparent. An example of one such issue was highlighted to me from a resident recently. She rang requesting legal representation from Preston Road Women's Society Centre, and she was told that they would not be able to advise or help due to her not being married. To provide a bit of context, she wanted legal advice with regards to a jointly owned property that she had with her partner. The solicitors there didn't have the experience or knowledge to deal with women who were not married, so she was turned away. My resident rang them because it advertised affordable justice and there should not be any women that are refused. I would therefore agree and ask that the council uses this motion to launch a wider investigation to all the charities it supports and their ethical values when deciding whether to fund them. Sorry. As Councillor Bridges says, everyone fleeing domestic abuse should have a right to feel safe and secure in any facility they are provided by an organisation meant to support them. but the same should be said that anyone accessing the services in support of organisations should be able to do so, regardless of relationships and relationship status. I'm crying because I'm just annoyed. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor Drake Davies.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bridges, for bringing this motion to the Chamber. In your speech, you referred to the original investigation. I think that was looking into the governance structure of Winner, which went to the Charities Commission. Unfortunately, my briefings from officers, there wasn't sufficient evidence to take any action out of that. But at the beginning of this year, I was contacted personally by two of the women who were heading up as spokespeople for the whistleblowers. I'd like to name them as Angie Wallace and Karina Wilkinson. They approached me directly with their concerns, and I referred them immediately because I was just so shocked with what I was hearing to the housing team at Hull City Council. And credit to them, they sat down and met with Karina and Angie and listened and took action, and the resultant actions, the referral to the regulator of social housing, which, as Councillor Hale says, is an agency with real teeth, is the right course of action. What I find just disgraceful is how this has been allowed to happen, and it's a lesson for all of us that we do need better oversight and better inspection regimes of all private housing across the city. So from this point forward, let's try and make sure this happens. But where it is now with the regulated social housing is the right place to be, and the council will make sure that the council will work closely with them to get to the bottom of this, get these women into proper, safe, warm, decent homes, and make sure that we have procedures in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drake Davies. In the absence of any other... Councillor Smarty, Councillor Wilkinson. If members get the impression that I'm at all irritated by Councillor Wilkinson's quiz team scoring more points than my quiz team in the Trevor Stark Memorial Quiz, I want to assure them that nothing could possibly be further from the truth.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Bridges for bringing this to the Council. It's something that she's been campaigning on for many years alongside my ward comrade, Councillor Pantelakis. And as well as Councillor Drake Davies pointed out, Angie Wallace, who I know of old, bringing this up as well as Karina. And I thank them for doing this and this campaigning. What this incident, this debacle has opened up is something that many of us that have been involved in housing and involved in the benefit system for many years have known for a very long time, is that this system is completely broken. The reason these organisations, and it's not just Winner, there's so many of them up and down the country, but there's so many in this area as well, get away with this is because of the support component of housing benefit. They make money hand over fist on this. Now, I don't have any up-to-date figures for Winner, but I do have a figure from about 3.5, 4 years ago, end of 2021. My work at the Citizens Advice Bureau at that time, I was on the Help to Claim service. It was a service that helped people claim universal credit. We had a referral through from the DAP team at the council for a woman who had fled her partner in Hull and walked 4 miles in the middle of the night with no shoes on to get away from him. She went to a cash machine about half an hour after leaving the house to then find her husband had already cancelled the joint account by that time and withdrawn all the money through the online account. She wasn't able to take a penny. She made it to Preston Road Women's Centre, waited until morning when it opened. They took her in, they made her a cup of tea, they were very nice to her. She was there most of the day, they were sorting her out with housing, until later on that afternoon when they found out she had a job and she earned too much for housing benefit. And she wouldn't be able to afford the £260 a week that they were charging at that time. About £70 of that a week was for the rent, the rest was for the service charge top-up. Housing benefit would pay every penny of that, paid for by the council but then redeemed from the Department for Work and Pensions. But as a person that's working, you have no chance of getting that. Councillor Pantelakis, a couple of years ago, had a resident of ours who had said that she'd fled domestic violence, had been housed by Winner, was very thankful for that. Her situation was now much better and she's ready to go back into work. But she can't, because she can't afford that rent, and the council at that time wouldn't house her because she had a house. So she was trapped. She was trapped in a system of benefits, trapped in a system where she would always be seen as a domestic violence victim, never able to move on and see herself as a survivor. And we see this with other organisations as well. It's not just within the DV charity sector. My work at the Citizens Advice in Bridlington now, I had a client come to us about July time last year, asking me if the bill he'd had from Sanctuary Housing was right. He was in just a bedroom, nothing else, everything else was shared, in homeless, temporary accommodation. £476 a week was his charge. More than £300 a week of that was for the support component. And I said, well, what support do you get? And he said, well, there's supposed to be someone on the door, but I've never seen them, a receptionist. We're supposed to get some food for that, but he isn't. And he asked me if I could send him to the food bank, which I did. And they are charging us as taxpayers for that. And there are organisations like this all over the country. Nobody should be forced to live in those situations. And this has blown this open to the news. And I thank Councillor Bridges and Councillor Pantelakis and the other contributors as well for doing that. And hopefully we can get a much better result for our residents. And we all have residents in these situations. And we can get this into the media attention and we can get some improvements.
I have no other speakers. Councillor Bridges, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I thank all the contributors on this. It is a really difficult subject and it's emotional. So thank you to everyone who spoke. And to echo Councillor Paul Drake-Davis, yeah, there's those brave people that have spoken up. One of those who whistle blew internally in Winner left the organisation due to bullying as a consequence of whistleblowing, and has continued to raise these issues with the council. She is a true champion on domestic abuse and violence, as is Angie Wallace. I don't know Katrina, but I've spoken recently to Angie, who has been advocating for these women. So many people have had to leave the organisation as employers. Now, these people, you know, go to work for this organisation because they passionately care. They've got, and more than that, they've got skills in working in this area, and they develop these skills over a number of years. Those skills have been stripped away because too many people have left. You saw on the news item about the ex-employee. I don't think it was anyone that we know of, but they spoke of the mental toil of seeing disrepair day after day and knowing that nothing was getting done about it. They had to leave the organisation. They basically said they had a mental breakdown, and if they hadn't left, they wouldn't have been able to carry on working. So I commend all these people who have spoken up. They've suffered as a consequence, but they have been able to leave and try and move on with their lives. These women that are living in these 178 properties are not able to leave. They are trapped in those properties. Some of them have been able to leave. Some of them have been able to get other accommodation. But how long do they have to carry on suffering? And these are women, as has been said by other speakers, who have suffered unknown trauma throughout their time. And they might well have had that trauma before they even entered into a relationship where there was domestic abuse and domestic violence. So it's trauma on trauma. And now they're living in more trauma as a consequence of their living conditions. It's not acceptable. And I'm very glad that there seems to be cross-party support to take action on this and to do something about it. But we have to make sure that this issue isn't just a motion, that it continues and we do something real with this motion. Take it through the Executive Commission, look at these properties, get Environmental Health to go and do those checks, look at the contracts and see what needs to be done. We need to ensure that the support is the right support, that the housing is safe